Joy to the world, all the boys and girls now. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Well, if you've ever read the Bible, you know that Jeremiah wasn't a bullfrog. But I sure love that song. It talks about the joy that we have, and it makes me dance. Why, I've been dancing ever since Jesus came by my tax booth. Well, actually, I got to see him several times walking by. He always paid his taxes. But one day I decided to follow him. I followed him outside of Capernaum, where my tax booth was, walked all the way out to this great crowd of people, and he sat down and he began to teach them. And it was the best sermon I've ever heard, and I hate sermons. But what a wondrous thing. He taught beautiful things. He taught blessings rather than curses. He taught joy rather than sternness. He taught wonderful things. Well, it wasn't too long after that he was coming back through town, and I was at my tax collector booth receiving all the wonderful frowns and grimaces of all the people, and he stopped. He stopped right by my booth and said, "Matthew, would you follow me? Would you be one of my disciples?" I thought he was kidding. Me? You mean me, Matthew, tax collector, Matthew? Well, yes, Matthew, I'm talking straight at you. I gave it all up. I put it all down. I gave it all up just so that I could follow Jesus. Never regretted it once. Not once. And of course, because of the joy that I felt, what else was I to do? I threw a party. And I invited all of my friends. Well, you know who were friends of tax collectors? Tax collectors. And other notorious sinners of the community. Well, that's who came. And all the righteous people stood on the outside, grumbling and switching their finger. They called Jesus out at one point. Oh, did you know that Jesus can really dance? He's good. He has more rhythm than the rest of us. I guess it just comes from heaven. Well, we were dancing, and he would dance in a line. He would dance in a circle. He would dance with individuals. He even danced with me. What a joy. But he heard the grumbling outside. Why, Jesus, if you're so holy, why are you associating with such notorious sinners as these? Well, I knew they were talking about me. But Jesus just said, the people who are sick are the ones who need doctors, not the people who are healthy, and I came to save sinners. I'll tell you what, when you figure out what this means, you can join the party. Show mercy rather than sacrifice. Did you know they never came into the party? It was so much fun. Well, you see, I thought that Jesus had called me to take care of the treasury. That wasn't it at all. They already had a treasurer. It was Judas. We lost Judas, you know. Lost him, oh, it was so sad. And I didn't get this bag until after Judas died. Oh, it wasn't the bag that he had. I mean, these bags, they're a dozen a shekel. But I got the treasury. And ever since that moment, I have been trying to empty this bag. It won't empty. Every time I give the coins away, it fills right back up again. You can't empty the bag. And it's not a burden, it's just, well, it's just not empty. But Jesus called me to start writing things down. And so that's what I did. I started writing things down. I started off with the way he was born, and I started off by writing, well, that sermon. You know how he started it off? Blessed are the poor in spirit. What a way to start a sermon. You would think he'd start off by saying, blessed are the rich and who can afford it all. No, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Why, you know, he added to that part of it. Because he talked about that those who come to me knowing that they are impoverished, knowing that they don't have to have it all. He said, look at the birds of the air. Why are you worried about what you're going to eat and what you're going to wear? Why, you know, I used to worry about those things myself. I had to have all the best food, of course, for all the parties, and the best wine for those same parties. I used to have the best suits of clothes, Armani, and, well, forget all that. Jesus said, look at the birds of the air. They never plant anything in the ground. They don't harvest it. They don't store it in the barns. And yet, God knows they need food. And so from the crows in the yard, to the sparrows in the temple, to the swans on the lake, God provides for them all. And what a joy it is. Then he said, look at the flowers of the field. Why, you're worried what you're going to wear, but look at them. They're naked as jaybirds. And yet God has arrayed them in such beauty, from the lilies of the field to the poppies on the mountain. God has arrayed them in beauty so brilliant that not even Solomon in all of his glory could compare with these. So why are you worried about what you can wear and what you can eat? God knows you need all these things, and you can't empty the bag. Well, then he said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Oh my, did we finally know what he was talking about? For on that day in which he died, we were plunged into the depth of sorrow. A sorrow so deep that none of us knew that we could ever be rescued from it. We had plunged into the miry pit, as the psalmist says. Yes, we mourned. We gathered into the upper room and we were scared and we were deep in mourning. And we stayed there for 2 days. But that was Friday and Saturday. But what we didn't know was that on Sunday, the first day of the week, the women of our band went to the tomb to go find that it was empty. John and Peter had a foot race to go see what they were talking about, and they rushed back to tell us that he's alive. And you should have seen the room, the bouncing up and down like children at a party. He's alive. Everything that he said is true. The resurrection is true. And the dance began again. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And comfort is what we received. Oh, the things that he said, the things that I wrote down. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. You know, it didn't matter to Jesus who came to him. It didn't matter if they were of high station or of low station. Well, I remember one story. We were coming into town and Jesus had been healing people, and then came the leader of the synagogue from that town. He came rushing up to Jesus and dropped on his knees and pleaded for mercy. A man of such high station. The leader of the synagogue had come, and yet he was bowing down at Jesus' feet, crying, "Have mercy on me, Lord. My daughter is sick to death." And so Jesus just dropped what he was doing right then, followed the man through the town. The crowds were all around us, pressing in from every side. And in the midst of the crowd, going to the leader of the synagogue's house to heal his daughter, Jesus stopped in his tracks and said, "Who touched me?" Well, Peter speaks up and says, "Jesus, how can you say, 'Who touched me?' People are all around us. Hundreds of people have touched you ever since we entered the city gates. How can you say, 'Who touched me. And Jesus just said, no, you don't understand. Who touched me? And there stood a woman. An older woman whose tunic was stained from the waist down in blood. I interviewed her later. She had been bleeding for 20 years and had spent everything she had trying her best to find a cure for the bleeding, and there was none. And Jesus asked her, woman, why did you touch me? And she knew that he had seen into her heart and said, Lord, I just knew that if I reached out and touched the hem of your garment, I would be healed. He said, woman, go, it is so. And she was healed from that moment. It was right then that people came from the leader's house with the bad news. Your daughter has died. Jesus said, oh, don't worry, she's not dead, she's just asleep. And so he took us all the way to his house, where there was lined outside a group of mourners crying their eyes out for the death of the child. And Jesus repeated again, don't worry. She's not dead, she's just asleep. They laughed at him. But he took a few of us inside. And he reached out to the little girl and said, Talitha kum, which just means, little girl, get up. And everybody started to dance again. The dance of joy. She's alive. The dance of redemption. Yes, anybody who would come. Anybody. Knowing that they couldn't do it themselves. Then he said, blessed are the hungry and the thirsty for righteousness, for they will be filled. Hungry and thirsty for righteousness. You know, it wasn't too long after all this that somebody came with news that John the Baptist had been executed. That was Jesus' cousin. And he wanted to take off and go to a lonely place. And so we went to that lonely place. And when we got there, the word had gotten out that Jesus was coming, and 5,000 people showed up. 5,000 people. And they were hungry to hear the good news of the kingdom. And so Jesus sat and taught them. Oh, the wonders of the things he taught, the parables that he gave, the sermons. I actually grew to love sermons. Well, his sermons. And he taught all day. At the end of the day, we knew that they were hungry for something else besides righteousness. They needed bread. And Jesus just said, well, you guys feed them. We did. What did we have? 5 loaves of bread and 2 dried fish. And every one of us got a broken piece of bread and a small handful of fish. And each of us, from Judas and Simon the Zealot to Philip and Nathaniel and me, we each gave out of our hand enough food from those 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed 5,000 people. And that's not the only time. A few days later, it was 4,000. But every place we went, Jesus satisfied the needs of those who came thirsting and hungering for something more than just food. Well, Jesus would do it. And we wrote down all of these things. But the one thing that struck me the most Well, it was mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Me. To receive mercy. Oh my. That reminds me of the time that Jesus sent each of us out. Well, actually, he sent us out 2 by 2. Each of us with a partner, and he said, proclaim the good news of mercy. Heal the sick. Feed the poor. And so that's what we did. And Jesus divided us up. And you want to know who he gave me as a partner? Simon the Zealot, that old cutthroat. Do you know who it was that Simon liked to slice up with that old dagger of his more than anybody else? Tax collectors. I almost wet myself. You want me to go with him? Jesus said, yeah, just try it and you'll see. Well, we started off for the next town over, and I was watching Simon every step of the way. Oh yeah, Jesus had healed him and given him peace, but he still had that dagger. But along the road, mercy began to take place. And he and I talked. And we talked of Jesus, and we talked of the kingdom, and we talked of love, and we talked of life. And to this very day, that old cutthroat Simon is my best friend because of mercy. Because of mercy. You see, mercy is just like this bag of coins. I've spent a lifetime now going from town to town and from country to country, proclaiming the good news and giving away these coins. And the bag, it's never been empty. And mercy, well, if you give it away, you'll always receive it in return. And so the dance continues. All of us who have received the mercy of the Lord, all of those who have been healed of our pain, all of us who have received comfort and peace. Yes, we dance because he loves us. We dance because he has set us free. Joy to the world, all the boys and girls now. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me.